Thank you very much, Hindu, and thank you for the presentation you made. A lot of the presentations have already mentioned, of course, the impact of indigenous knowledge, technologies, and practice on addressing the crisis that we face, as people. And so I wouldn't repeat all of those. I would just like to focus basically on the action, the awareness and action that's needed, no? And I only have 4 points to share with you. But before I go there, I just would like to say I'm a Kankanai Igorot. We are indigenous peoples from the northern part of the Philippines, and my parents both come from the same village in our own traditional territory, and I grew up there, so I do have the knowledge in relation to all the, of course, the values, as well as I'm familiar with the rituals. I'm a fluent speaker of my own language, and this gave me the kind of confidence that I have in relation to this kind of work that I am doing. Basically, I have been involved with the UN drafting and negotiating the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And this instrument is something that I will talk a little bit more about. I will just focus on this, on how we can combine awareness and action. And the first point, which has been reiterated many times, even in this panel, is really the importance, the link, the direct link of the protection, respect, and fulfillment of human rights when we are addressing this crisis, no? This is the reason why indigenous peoples have gone to all this convention on biodiversity, the UNFCCC, now the SDGs, to assert that human rights should be integrated into the decisions, in particular, of course, indigenous peoples' rights. And this is where the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and ILO Convention number 169, which are the main instruments, main legal instruments which protect our rights, is always referred to. We would like that this reference is mentioned in many of these decisions, because this enshrines the rights that we have fought for almost 25 years. Now, we started drafting in 1985. The UN General Assembly only adopted the declaration in 2007. It took that long to have this declaration adopted, but we are very happy with this, because this is a very unique declaration, because it's the first time ever that there is a declaration that looks and that articulates the collective rights of people. No, in the past, in fact, I remember the UK negotiator which came to me and said, "Vicky, if you are pushing for this UN declaration, you are going to dismantle the human rights system of the UN." And I said, "Why?" "Because this is based on individual rights." And I said, "So you mean to say we will just keep quiet about our collective rights because the human rights that you have so far is for individuals?" And I said, "No, in fact, all the people who are coming here are basically really fighting for our collective rights to self-determination, to our lands, territories, and resources, our cultures, of course, the free, prior, and informed consent, among others." So it is a very unique. So I invite you all to really give time to read this, because it's unprecedented in the whole history of the United Nations to have such a legal instrument. So when we were talking about, there was a comment about the importance of food systems and how this should be included centrally in the discussion of indigenous knowledge. I would just like to reiterate that, it was mentioned also earlier, the holistic approach that we have always lived by and adopted, in which we do not look at climate change, biodiversity, and food systems as separate systems. No, these are intricately linked together. Diverse food systems are very much linked to biodiversity, the diverse species and ecosystems that we have. And so the key action that needs to be taken is to ensure that our rights to our lands, territories, and resources, among others, are really respected and implemented. Our capacities to contribute our knowledge and actions will be limited if we are displaced from our territories, lands, and waters, and our resources are extracted by corporate and state interests. Even solutions to climate change and biodiversity erosion have the potential to violate our rights if we are not involved and we are not able to participate in designing, planning, and implementing these. As a special rapporteur, I held this position for 6 years. It ended in 2020. I have seen some renewable energy projects are imposed in indigenous territories without consulting the indigenous peoples and getting their consent. In fact, there's a landmark decision of the Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination on a complaint filed by the Sami peoples against windmills that were being built in the reindeer herding territories, and they were not consulted about this, no, and the committee decided that indeed their rights to their livelihood, to their cultures, have been violated. This is a very important report. If you have the chance to read it, it really is very educational in terms of understanding what collective rights are. So, so this is my first point, no, that we should really ensure that human rights is at the center. And of course, we support fully the ecosystem-based approach as well that the Convention on Biodiversity has developed and promoted. The other problem is also this 30 by 30 target. Kapak mentioned this. And we have seen that if there is going to be an increase of protected areas in marine and land areas, most of these areas will be indigenous territories, no? And recently, even in the Philippines, there was a consultation held of 30 by 30 in marine areas. And I complained because there was not a single indigenous person invited to speak. So I presented myself. I said I would like to speak. And when I went there, an NGO presented the data and said that 45% of the marine resources that you will expand to are indigenous waters. No? And so you really need to ensure that indigenous peoples are included when we are talking about 30 by 30. No? So that those are the problems that we can possibly we can imagine when these are being implemented, and therefore the right to participate and be included is crucial, no, for us in this work. Of course, the other thing is, of course, this transition minerals, no. The move towards a green economy has of course stated that transition minerals to be used for renewable energy, among others, are really going to be mined. And many of these transition minerals are also in indigenous territories, whether this is lithium or nickel. And our friends in DRC, there's a lot of illegal mining, of these rare minerals that's happening, and that's causing a lot of the conflict in the particular part of the world. Even in my country, the Philippines, nickel mining has created lots of conflicts in the territories of indigenous peoples. So that's just the elucidation I want to make in relation to the human rights approach. The second point is the need to narrow the gap between indigenous knowledge and Western science. And I think my friend Nirmi has articulated that very well. Now that despite the fact that it's now established that 80% of biodiversity are found in our territories, and we are the ones who are effectively sequestering carbon through our forests and oceans, there is still a lot of discrimination, no, against indigenous people's knowledge, and misrepresentation of this still persists, no. So this workshop that we are holding is really very important. It's one step which is crucial to sustain the constructive dialogue between indigenous peoples and Western scientists, as well as the faith communities, of course. Organizing more dialogues of this kind should be done everywhere. I was pleased to hear that you promised that you will also reach out to the other academies, and we look forward to hearing about these kinds of efforts, because I think that's the way to go. The IPBES, the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, has declared that multiple knowledge systems contribute to solving the global environmental crisis, and so that instrument, that agreement, and the program that IPBES has is crucial also for us. But even beyond the academia, the priests and laypersons active in the church should also be mobilized to take part in these dialogues. And they can decide how they can also raise the awareness of the church members about indigenous peoples and about indigenous knowledge. The discrimination against indigenous peoples within the dominant society and the media continues. And I have no doubt that if the churches and faith communities contribute in addressing this, it can make a big difference. Ministries of education also should be capacitated and supported to integrate indigenous knowledge in the curriculum and courses in the academia. Mirna's point yesterday about indigenous teachers being one of the main obstacles in promoting indigenous knowledge and languages is so true. That also happens in the Philippines. No, when we are working with the government to promote the goals of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, we see that many of the teachers are the ones resisting because they don't know how to teach the language. They are not speakers of the language, and the ones who speak the language are not, of course, the teachers. No, so they have to really find ways and means of mobilizing others to teach the language. We have been doing orthographies. We have been helping indigenous peoples to develop their orthographies because we saw that the Ministry of Education doesn't have materials at all on indigenous languages as well as indigenous stories, among others. No, the third point is, of course, addressing the unsustainable consumption and production, no, which is continuing up to now. And but addressing this and really ensuring that more sustainable consumption and production systems are put in place is another key step to stopping climate change and biodiversity erosion, as well as the food crisis. We have heard about the subsidies that are being used to promote industrial agriculture, fossil fuel extraction, among others, and this should not continue. No, it was mentioned by our friends from who spoke from Europe. Bilateral investment treaties, which violate human rights, need to be monitored and also to end. As a special rapporteur, I made a report, a thematic report on bilateral treaties, and I discovered that, for instance, Bolivia, who had to stop a treaty and a bilateral investment which was mining silver in one part of Bolivia. But because of the protest of indigenous peoples, the project had to be stopped. The government was forced to stop the project. And the mining company fined the Bolivian government millions of dollars for stopping that investment because that is contained in the agreement that you cannot stop an investment that you agreed to when you signed this bilateral treaty. No? So that's the potential of these treaties to continue violating human rights as well as to subsidize pesticide, fertilizer use, fossil fuel extraction, among others, is really the one causing many of the problems that we face. And it's so unfortunate that, you know, even in Dubai when we were there, a lot of the major oil, you know, and fossil fuel companies were there. And now it's going to be held in Azerbaijan. And the head of the negotiations is used to be an oil executive, no? So that's the kind of reality that we face as we tackle this crisis that we are facing. And finally, the last point is the empowerment of indigenous communities, no, through autonomy and indigenous governance. In doing my role again as a rapporteur, I was so inspired and I gathered a lot of hope when I visited autonomous indigenous municipalities and regions because this is something that should really be multiplied in a lot of areas. I went to Michoacan in Mexico and I met with the Poripecha people who decided that they will declare their municipality as autonomous. Because the drug cartels are they are deforesting their forests, no, and they got sick and tired of it. The women led the protest, and they were able to stop the trucks that were bringing out the logs. Then I had a meeting with the government because they were actually the Puripecha people a case was filed against them saying that what they did was illegal. They cannot self-proclaim themselves as an autonomous municipality. But they brought this case to the Supreme Court, and the Puripecha people won because the Constitution of Mexico says that the indigenous peoples have the right to govern themselves and to set up autonomous municipalities. So when I met with the Mexican government, I asked them about this, and I said, these people claim that after they declared autonomy, they have better security, peace, there were no cartels coming to recruit their kids, and of course that the well-being of the people has improved. And do you agree that that happened? And they said, yes, actually you're right. So this is what gives me hope that this kind of empowerment, if we are able to assert that, then we will be able to stop these kinds of initiatives that are going to destroy our lands and territories and of course violate our rights. Part of this is, of course, addressing and involving the indigenous youth and women in a more systematic way. No, I have observed a growing hopelessness and frustration among the indigenous youth because of the serious challenges they face in their own societies. We see extreme solutions where they either marry very early, or some of them don't even bother to marry anymore and have children because they said, why should we have children? The world is in such a mess. We don't like to have our children growing up in this kind of world. So that kind of hopelessness is very sad, and I think that building societies where they are able to appreciate their culture, their values, and enhancing and supporting the role of women to continue transmitting to them these values, the languages, the knowledge, among others, is important. This is crucial for our indigenous youth to be able to gather, to have the hope that they will be able to contribute in changing the world to become a better place. No, we. I think the other thing that we have to show is us as role models. No, they also get inspired when they see us and they see that we have been fighting consistently for the rights. We are still there, even if we are already old. And many of these young people are happy. They are inspired, and I think that's really something that we should continue to do. Because otherwise we will not have a chance to bring about a society that we are all looking for. So I'd like to end with that, and again, thank you to the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences and Science for bringing us together to this. You are also a source of hope for us. Thank you.